Okay, I'll just make some brief introductory remarks. I'll try to keep it as brief as possible. First, for anyone who is comfortable answering, how many people are here at the UN for the Sustainable Development meeting? Okay, good. And how many people, again, if you're comfortable, came here through drug policy? Okay. Thanks for joining us. So for anyone who isn't familiar, the UN meeting last week and the first half of this week is called the High-Level Political Forum on Sustainable Development. These meetings are happening each year as part of a major UN project called the Sustainable Development Goals. Hundreds of goals falling into 17 categories. Roughly speaking, the SDGs seek to solve all the major world problems by the year 2030, or to do as much as we can. Some of the goals being focused on in this year's meeting are in areas like clean energy, water and sanitation, livable cities, forest management, and so forth. Now, in drug policy, of course, most issues relate to each other in one way, in some ways. We see a few of the goal areas as being particularly relevant. Goal number one on poverty. These are you see these symbols like this all over the UN if you take a tour or have a pass to enter. Goal number one on poverty. Goal number three on health. Stopping the spread of AIDS. Ending AIDS by 2030 is the stated goal. That requires addressing issues like injection drug use. Goal number 8 on work. Number 10 on inequality. We're concerned with the mass arrests taking place in this country that leave millions of people with criminal records that make it hard to get jobs. These are just some examples. It's fair to say that those of us in the reform community see a great deal of tension between the current drug control framework and achievement of some of the Sustainable Development Goals. Now, that's a larger issue, and I'm speaking only for myself and my organization. Our speakers today will speak for themselves. But this event today is the third in a series. The other two were at the UN in Vienna, Commission on Narcotic Drugs meeting. The first of which in March of last year featured a video presentation from Vice President Leni Robredo of the Philippines. Unfortunately, allies of President Duterte attacked Robredo for doing this. They argued that she had coordinated the release of the video with other events that took place that week as part of a campaign to destabilize the government. And they succeeded in starting a drive to impeach the vice president, thankfully an unsuccessful one, but it had an impact on the debate. So this leads to the other goal that we in drug policy see as having a lot to do with what we work on. Goal number 16, peace, justice, and strong institutions. In drug policy, and our work at the UN started a couple of years before Duterte was elected, getting ready for the April 2016 UN General Assembly special session on the world drug problem, or UNGAS. And we and many other NGOs from the US and around the world promoted a platform on advocating progressive approaches, emphasizing health and development and so forth. And something that we argued in one of our contributions in a sign-on statement was that when drug control objectives, including provisions of the UN drug control treaties, are in irreconcilable conflict with obligations under human rights treaties, that the human rights treaties take precedence, according to the Charter of the United Nations, which is the world's supreme treaty. Now, unfortunately, 2 months after the ungas, well, that's my opinion. All politics and government is complicated, but 2 months after the ungas, President Duterte was elected president of the Philippines. He had promised in his campaign to kill hundreds of thousands of drug addicts and drug sellers, which he claimed would solve the drug problem within 6 months of his taking office, or he would resign. The death toll estimates vary, but according to the government, in a statement, oddly, of the Duterte administration's accomplishments, there were over 20,000 killings as of March of this year. Now, the exact nature of what happened and whose fault it is, or what the government is doing about it, that's all contested. And we'll know more about this, I'm sure, from Justine. I think that's what I wanted to say to start us off. And so we'll move on to Justine Balane, the International Secretary for Akbayan Youth in the Philippines. Just